We sub it in on our max effort type movement. So there's weeks where we might have barbell bench as our heavy lift for that week. There's other days where we'll sub in one-arm dumbbell bench for the heavy lift for that week. On our dynamic effort day, we use one-arm dumbbell bench as our potentiator, our activator going into dynamic effort barbell bench. Mm-hmm. So we'll go through our warm-up, and then we'll take them up to a heavy 3 or a heavy 5 on one-arm dumbbell bench, 4 or 5 sets to work up to that. And then we jump into 60-70% chain bench. So we kind of use that as our contrast method to get hyped up before we chain bench. We do a lot of one-arm standing cable bench press work, and we really focus on keeping the load down early on so that we're able to work on really rotating through the hip and getting that back toe in. As we get heavier, we kind of just have to lock into place and lean to anchor it down, and we don't rotate as much. Mm-hmm. But that depends on if we're using it for a lighter, higher rep volume day, or we're going to use it as a max effort substitution for barbell bench.
So when you do a max effort sub, you're looking at 5 reps, heavy?
5s.
Yeah.
Maybe not 3s on something like that.
Right.
So we're staying around 80%. I really like the one-arm dumbbell bench. I learned it from a guy named Brian McCall way back in the day. It's not something I came up with. He used to do it for rehab, and I started using it to kind of offset unilateral imbalance. But we really like it because we'll come down, and even though we're not using it like a one-arm med ball push where we're coming out of the hip, we still engage that same chain. And it's hip, rotate into it, and press. And so we're getting a lot of torso out of that one, and that's what I like about it. Going over to the push-up conversation, some of the different things we do a one-arm hop-over push-up on a med ball. We use the smaller ones, one hand on the ground, one hand on the ball. Push, transfer in the air, and switch hands. You land with the other hand on the ball, and we're just hopping over the whole time, going down the depth every time. So you are getting that exaggerated stretch on one, but more stable on the other side. We use a lot. Not now. I used to use it more with a depth drop push-up. You've got a hand up on each box, and we'll drop down to the floor, take the push-up down, chest to the floor, or jump back up and land on the boxes. Have you seen those? Mm-hmm. We like that as a speed contrast method. I've got some stuff on YouTube. I actually was thinking about hooking the computer up and showing some of that stuff. This is back before I blew my shoulder out. For my training, one of the last good workouts I had was a dynamic effort band workout on bench, 8x3. But my superset, my speed contrast, was a 3-rep depth drop push-up. So I was doing a 60-second rotation and just smashing it. And some of my guys aren't that strong, but I can see some football guys crushing something like that.
You were saying you do your dynamic effort bench at 70%?
It depends. Our guys now are like 50%.
Right.
Our heavy guys are maybe at 70. But we're more 50, 60, 70s, the upper limits of that.
So if you've got a guy that's just for sake of argument, 300-pound bench presser, he might be in that 70%. Single chain?
Single chain.
Now, do you use a lead? You set it up like Louie and his guys do with a lead, or do you have the chain where it's hanging off the bar?
I've got a lead so that in extension, when the bar's racked, we've got 1 or 2 chain links touching the floor. Mm-hmm. So when they unrack it, the chain is all the way off the ground.
And it should be fully deloaded on the chest. Okay,
yeah,
so that's how we set ours up.
We're not completely deloaded, but about 80%, 90%.
So your lead, what you're saying is your lead in the bottom is the only thing hanging off everything.
Right.
All the links are touching it.
Ideally. Now, obviously, you've got 40 guys in a room. You got to try to group them up. Some guys have arms this long, some guys have arms this long.
Right.
So ours is a little bit, we're kind of guessing as we're doing it, but the goal is as it gets to the chest. I just was curious because a lot of like the bigger, faster, stronger, which is just the collar with the chain on it.
Right.
That's kind of a different deal, and it loads differently. So I was just kind of wondering because
Yeah.
I've never seen. I don't know about you, Monty. I don't know if you've ever seen dynamic effort at 70% before. That's pretty high up there. We've actually kept our guys down in the 50s and 60s.
It seems like the trend now is to go heavier.
You see, I always thought the trend. I thought the early trend was to be heavier, whereas the new trend with Louis
think-
and his
Well,
guys.
I think
can go
Louis
live.
is getting lighter,
I-
right?
Louis
Louis
is
is
lighter.
lighter.
Well, he talks about like 30 and,
50% started.
Yeah,
even
but that's what they're
40s.
doing, their double band stuff, and those guys are going 30% of their one rep max on that stuff.
I know I was using green bands and 100 kilos for an 8x3. And I was maybe benching, at that point, 140, 145 kilos. So that was up over 50% easily, you know, it was more up there around that 70% number.
With
And that-
bands.
With bands.
Wow.
And that was tough for me,
That's
but
tough.
that's the type of, I'm more an explosive athlete, I'm not an athlete at all anymore. But when I was decent, I wasn't strong, I was just really, really fast, really explosive, but I'm not gonna push heavy weight at all. Sub-max stuff, I'm just not good. Some of the other push-up stuff we do, we use stability ball lockout stuff, have you used that?
I'm not familiar with it, can you?
Push-up position on the ball, drop and catch on the ball.